What is up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to episode 2 of Healing Brittney, and I am super excited to share with you my testimony. I will not be going into explicit details about my testimony. However, you'll get the gist of what it is that I'm saying by way of how I'm saying it. So, girl, go get you some tea, go get you some coffee, get you a bagel, some avocado, boiled egg, whatever you need to do. Grab your pillow and come sit with your girl as I share with you my testimony. Telling my testimony used to be so extremely hard for me because there were a lot of triggers. So even if I found myself having conversation with other people, anything that was said along the lines of whatever it was that I was going through really triggered me to the point where I would get up, walk away. I would just be feeling some type of way, and I just didn't want to deal with it at all. And being as though that I was acting that way is because I wasn't healed. I was going through some things, and no matter how much I said to myself that I was healed, I knew for a fact that I was not healed. Let's go back to when I was born as a kid. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on September 8th. My mother passed away when I was 3 years old, and my father, whoever he is, signed his rights over when I was a baby. He didn't want me. Growing up, I lived with my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, my mother's mother and father, and they raised me from the time that my mother left this earth all the way up until I was 18 years old, or old enough to be on my own, and they were my parents. However, I did have some or a mother figure that was close and dear to me that played a little part in it that I called my godmother. However, that story is for another time because at this moment in my life, we are no longer even talking. But nevertheless, God is still good. So when my mom died, my grandmother, her mother, took care of her, and she made a promise to my mother that she would care for me and my sister. I am one of two. I have a sister that is a year younger than me. She still lives in Philadelphia. She is a mother. My grandmother promised my mother that she would take care of me and my sister until we were old enough to be on our own, and she did just that. Me and my sister have two different fathers. I have my own father. My sister does know her father. She is in contact with him. But me, I really didn't know who mine was. Moving along, after my mom died, my grandmother sought to seek full custody of us. In that moment, when my grandparents went to court to get full custody of us, it was so easy, which was sad, for them to get full custody of me because of the fact that my father pretty much signed his rights over. He was done. Like, there was so technically, although his name is on my birth certificate, he's not really my father because he didn't want to be. So anyway, long story short, my grandparents became my legal guardians. They didn't become my mother and father. They became my legal guardians. So they were still grandmom and grandpa, but they became my legal guardians. So they had say over everything. And it was either that or me and my sister be placed in foster care. So I thank God that my grandmother was able to get us, and she took care of us, and she was such an amazing person. I miss her so much. Both of my grandparents have gone on to be with the Lord, and they were just some amazing people. So although they were not mom and dad, they were grandmom and grandpa, they were still mom and dad, if you understand what I'm saying. And they played such an amazing role in my growth and who I am today. And I love them so dearly for that, and I miss them so much. Moving forward, here I am as a child. I wasn't a problem child, but I was very rebellious due to the fact that I suffered as being what is called the black sheep of the family. Because I didn't have any outside family members from my father's side, I dealt with my mother's side, my maternal side, which was okay. I grew up in a tight-knit family. However, I was very different than everybody else. I have a close relationship with my sister, as well as my mother's sister, who is my aunt, but all of the rest of the family at this moment, I do not talk to. And it's because of a lot of toxicity and where I am in life. If you're pushing me away from God, I don't want to deal with it. And stepping back and stepping away was the best thing that has ever happened to me. I was always different. I knew I was different because I did things differently. I act differently. I walk differently. I talk differently. I just did not know that I was considered chosen, if you know what I mean. So when God was dealing with me spiritually, even as a child, as I got older and different things like that, I couldn't understand why my family was not against it, but they just couldn't see it. But then God had to show me the people that are close to you are not going to see you the way that He sees you because they know you. They're too familiar. Okay, growing up, although I was rebellious and different things like that, I was told that my mother passed away from cancer as a child. But then later on, as I started to become a teen and I started to rebel and have these issues, I had a nervous breakdown where my grandfather finally then revealed to me that my mother was taken out of here due to my father. My father ended up giving her HIV, which is called AIDS. She died from that, and again, he caught it from someone else, and it was of the opposite sex. It was of the same sex, not a woman. However, long story short, I began to hold a small grudge against my grandparents for telling me that, because I wanted to know, why did you lie to me? But they were like, we didn't lie. We just didn't feel like you were ready to understand. And to a certain extent, they were protecting me. So I got over that. As I grew older, due to not having such a father figure in my life, I ended up gravitating and finding love in all of the wrong ways, which in turn created me having to deal with domestic violence. So I am a domestic violence survivor. I dealt with sexual abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, and physical abuse. And all of this was before I got married and had children. So growing up as a child, even as a young child, all the way up until I was maybe about, I'm going to say about 17, 18 years old, I dealt with domestic violence. And it was very, very bad. I was never on drugs. I was never in the streets or anything, but I was taken advantage of because of who I was. During my vulnerability, people started to tell me things that I wanted to hear because I wasn't hearing it. And I ended up yielding into that direction and becoming hurt by it. It wasn't until I got into a very bad situation where the person that I was involved with in that moment, and I wouldn't say I was involved, but the person that was narcissistic and that was, abusing me, pushed me out of a moving vehicle and then tried to back his vehicle up on me and take me out of here. In that moment, my grandmother was standing there, and I remember verbatim telling her, my aunt was there with me, and she was like, "You're not going to do anything to help her?" And my grandmother was like, "No, because I am tired of telling her the same thing and she don't want to listen. Sometimes you have to fall in order to be able to get back up. So when my aunt took me in the house, my grandmother came and she sat down with me. And I remember saying to her, why didn't you help me? Why didn't you help me? She said, because I have been trying to help you for all these years. Now, let me ask you the question. Are you ready to stop? Are you ready to stop running? Are you ready to do something about it? And I was like, yes. So that's when she helped me get a restraining order and everything. And in that moment, I said, you know what, God, I surrender. I'm tired. This is becoming a bit much. I'm just really tired. And I vowed to myself and I said, you know what? I am never dating again. I am never getting married. I don't want to have children. I don't want to do anything. And that was my prayer to God. I just wanted it to be me and him because I was tired of going through it. And it wasn't just that one person. It was a lot of people. So I started to take care of myself and, surrender my all to God. Now, mind you, I've been in church. I grew up in church and everything, but this is when I fully started to surrender everything to him. Mind you, I received my calling into ministry when I was a teenager. I was about 13 or 14 years old. I received my calling to preach into ministry, and I ran for a long period of time, and I will get into that. But it wasn't until I went through that where I was like, you know what, God, I surrender. Whatever it is you want me to do, I surrender. I'm going to do it. So at that moment, I started to become better. I started to see things differently. I started to act differently. And my family just did not understand. So that's when I felt like I became the black sheep, but I was already the black sheep. They saw the difference. When I told them I accepted my call into ministry, some of them laughed. They looked at me like, what? You? Please, and it was a bit disturbing. And then I get into seminary. I go to seminary and I'm in seminary and I met this young man. Well, I met this guy who is now my husband, but he had always been in my class. Now, mind you, never really said nothing, always thought he was married. I knew he was a pastor. Didn't really look at him like that. It was, hey, that's a classmate, that's it. And we very rarely exchanged words. However, one day, it was my birthday, and I was supposed to go to New York with my friend because I lived in Philadelphia with my best friend at that time, but she stood me up. And I remember coming back to class, and he was like, I thought you were going to New York. And I said, well, I didn't go. And he was like, well, happy birthday. He said, well, had you told me that you wasn't going to New York, I could have took you out somewhere. I'm like, how you going to take me out? You don't even have my number. And then that's when the conversation ceased. And then I was going to my second class and he was leaving, and I felt somebody come up behind me, and I looked, I was like, what is it? He was like, well, can I have your number? I said, sure. So I gave him my number, and not even 5 seconds before I get into my class door, my phone is ringing. I said, hello, who is this? He tell me who it is. And I was like, okay, but I have to go to class. He said, well, I just wanted to call you to make sure that it was the right number, because if it wasn't the right number, I wasn't going to call you again or ever speak to you again. And I was like, oh, okay, wow. After that, I went downstairs. My cousin usually take me home because she was a part of me with seminary. Her name was Nikita. I love her so much. And that night, I went downstairs to wait for her, and she was gone, but he was there. So he ended up taking me home, and I think they had set that up, but it was just so sweet. But yeah, that's how I met my husband, and we ended up getting married a year later and had my beautiful son. And he's a pastor. He's always been a pastor for over 30-something, 40-something years. We do have an age gap marriage. He is older than me, much older than me, which is fine, but I am still older too. But he's just such an amazing person, didn't have any children or anything. And a lot of the stuff that I prayed against, God was like, I have other plans. But I also prayed that whoever my husband is, make sure that my children or his children are our children. I don't want to have to deal with baby mama drama or anything like that, because I dealt with that before. Anyway, moving along. We're married, we're, doing stuff. I have been happily married for 16 years, but during this process, God has been testing. God tested us. We went through a lot, and we learned that a lot of the stuff that we went through was not for us, but for somebody else. I have dealt with homelessness, not only just being with me. I dealt with homelessness even as a teenager. I dealt with homelessness as an adult. I dealt with homelessness being married. I dealt with homelessness having 6 kids. I dealt with homelessness. I have slept outside before. I have slept in my car before. I have lived in hotels before. I know what it feels like not to have food to eat. I know what it's like. So that's why I am so passionate about helping other people, because I know what it's like to want and need things and then not have anybody to call on when you need it, especially those that's supposed to love and care for you like family. The only person that has ever been a backbone to me, and I love her dearly, is my sister. And I still talk to her to this day. And anytime we have ever needed anything, she was always there. Anytime she needed something, we was always there for her. And I just thank God. I just thank God that He's kept me. I thank God that He's allowing me to be able to speak to other people about who He is. And I'm getting emotional, and I said I wasn't going to do this, so I might have to do a part 2, so excuse me.